You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, your host, and I'm also still host to that cold that ate Cleveland that I've had for, it feels like, 750,000 years. You can hear it in my voice. I am much better. I sound worse than I am, actually. But I feel guilty because I feel like I must have personally deforested all of Appalachia for the Kleenex I have consumed. Still, I feel much more positive just doing this episode of the program because my guest today is a woman who, let me put it this way, if you're older than 18 years old, you're going to hear her and sit up and think, wow, what have I done with my life? I have to get cracking. She's that extraordinary. And of course, there's Surrealism Corner and there's Fighting Words. But before we go anywhere or do any one more thing, I have to grab another Kleenex, and you and I have to go inside the headlines. Let's try bad news, good news this week. Bad news. Journalism off balance. While Trump rants on about the need for merit in applications for asylum, much less citizenship in the United States, it seems that merit has even less to do with admission to colleges than we've already feared. The snowplow parents who stop at nothing and pay anything to get their kids into college made major headlines last week and should have been covered, certainly, but not to the almost exclusion of mainstream coverage on the worst natural disaster in southern Africa in 2 decades. Unless you're a news junkie like I am, you and the rest of us in the Western world heard little or nothing about the record cyclone that destroyed much of Mozambique and killed 84 people there, in addition killing 98 in Zimbabwe and cutting a swath across Malawi as well, affecting 1.5 million people across the 3 countries. Since most of our news reporting never connects the dots or gives much context, that story was not presented by anyone as related to another minimally covered fact that broke this week. Hundreds of American cities and towns are doing away with their recycling programs, citing high costs. China, once a major purchaser of American recyclables, decided recently that too much garbage was mixed in with the useful recyclables. In Philadelphia, for example, about half of recycled material is burned in an incinerator, and in Memphis, recyclables from the airport are simply sent to a landfill. Of course, we could cut back on our obscene habit of over-packaging items, and we might just learn how to sort out trash. But no, those ideas would make sense. Good news. Well over 150,000 students in more than 100 countries from the South Pacific to the edge of the Arctic Circle walked out of classes on March 15th to protest failures by their governments to take action about climate change. The coordinated school strikes were inspired by 16-year-old Swedish activist Greta Thunberg, who began holding solitary demonstrations outside the Swedish parliament last year. Since then, weekly protests have grown from a handful of cities to hundreds. Thunberg, who's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, says that the world will reach dangerous levels of warming by the time she and her contemporary protesters will be in their 40s and 50s, maybe even 30s, if nothing is done. And she adds that nothing serious is being done. An 8-year-old girl, Havana Chapman Edwards, addressed protesters at the U.S. Capitol saying, "We are telling the truth, and we do not take no for an answer. Borders, languages, and religions do not separate us." The world has already warmed further by 1.8 degrees since 2015, when the Paris Accords were signed. Perhaps the Children's Crusade might move cynical governments to action. Bad news. Iranian judges sentenced human rights lawyer and feminist activist Nasrin Sotoudeh to 38 years in prison and 48 lashes. The charges against her include propaganda against the state, disturbing public peace and order, appearing in court without a headscarf, and encouraging corruption and prostitution. This is the severest sentence in recent years for any activist, according to human rights groups. Sotuda is currently already serving a 5-year prison sentence that she received in absentia, for which she was arrested in June of last year. Meanwhile, in Iran's arch-enemy and competitor for supremacy in the region, Saudi Arabia, 3 women's rights activists and bloggers, Nouf Abdulaziz, Lujain al-Hathlul, and Iman al-Nafjan, remain in prison. They have suffered solitary confinement and torture by the Saudi government as part of its campaign against women who speak in defense of women's rights in the kingdom. They were arrested in May and June of last year, just as the government was lifting the ban on women driving, because apparently the barbaric young crown prince, MBS, was afraid that women's activism would be encouraged by the 20-year-long fight to drive, having culminated in victory, and he wanted the credit alone of bestowing the right all to himself. The international writers' organization PEN has awarded the 3 women with the Freedom to Write Award in absentia. Saudi Arabia's pal, Trump, has of course not commented on any of the above arrests and censorings. But Trump has taken to Twitter to deplore the temporary rescheduling of Jeanine Pirro, the right-wing commentator whose anti-Muslim statements on Fox News were so virulent that even Fox yanked her and says it's rescheduling her show. This Trump called silencing, since he's so concerned about free speech. Good news, and we sure need some after that. Moving from freedom to speak to the way we speak in any language unearths an interesting story that broke this week, also with scant coverage. It looks like we may have women to thank for how we talk. Most accepted theories about the invention of agriculture attribute that to women, who, when in late pregnancy, were unable to join in communal hunting and foraging, but rather stayed closer to home and began playing around with plants. One way to trace this is through forms of worship, because hunting gods began to fall by the wayside, while fertility divinities, largely female, were on the ascent. Now we learn that the development of agriculture a few millennia ago is likely responsible for how we talk. Some 8,000 years ago, when we humans began relying more on farming and less on meat for our food got softer. This, in turn, affected the human bite, and that led to a change in the sounds that we make with our mouths, including the relatively recent introduction of the V and F sounds, both of which are made by touching the front upper teeth to the lower lip. That, according to a research team at the University of Zurich, is why we can say, very fine, for example. Think what sounds we might be able to make if we all became pure vegetarians. Finally, already having had enough bad news, let's just go straight to another good news item. NASA's first all-female spacewalk is scheduled for March 29th around the International Space Station. It will include astronauts Anne McClain and Christina Koch, as well as Jackie Cagey, as the lead spacewalk flight controller. This spacewalk will last around 7 hours, and the on-the-ground flight control team at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston will include lead flight director Mary Lawrence and NASA engineer Kristen Facciol. McClain, Koch, and Cagey are all from the 2013 astronauts class, which NASA says was 50% female. Have a safe and smooth walk, sisters. We'll be waving at you. Now it's time for our first brief pause, but coming up is Fighting Words. And before that, the conversation that is so uplifting. And before that, where we're going next when we return into the Surrealism Corner. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back, and on our way to the Surrealism Corner. The Food and Drug Administration has just approved the first drug specifically for postpartum depression. Now, regular listeners to this program know that I'm strongly pro-science, and I also know that postpartum depression is real, clinically described as a disorder beginning during pregnancy or within the month of childbirth, characterized by feelings of worthlessness or guilt, and even by thoughts of suicide. And I know that it is far more severe than the so-called common baby blues. And why are they common? An estimated 400,000 women in the United States each year suffers from postpartum depression. Nonetheless, I must say that this announcement from the FDA gives me pause. The newly approved drug, called brexanolone, will be marketed under the name Zulresso and costs on average $34,000 per patient for a course of treatment. And that's before discounts, according to the manufacturer, Sage Therapeutics in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The drug is administered intravenously for 60 continuous hours, and the FDA approval requires that it be administered under strict safety conditions because of concerns that it can cause, quote, excessive sedation and sudden loss of consciousness, close quote. The FDA-approved label also says clearly that data from a study in which 12 women who were breastfeeding received the drug showed that the medication is, in fact, transferred to breast milk while nursing. However, they added, the amount passed to the infant is low. Low? What's low that the adult could pass out from it? Women diagnosed with postpartum depression are currently treated with antidepressants and psychotherapy, but the drugs take 4 to 8 weeks to be fully effective, while this new one zips along and takes effect quickly and lasts at least a month. Psychiatrists seem very happy about the drug, noting that postpartum depression, one of the most common complications of childbirth, is underdiagnosed and neglected, and that suicide is a major cause of maternal death. Well, yes, certainly more attention given to all the health complaints of women would be a refreshing change. But this stuff makes me really nervous. For one thing, the price alone and the fact that it must be administered intravenously for 60 continuous hours place it well out of the reach of most women. For another, losing consciousness while taking it and or passing the drug through breast milk to a newborn seem to yell, red light, lots more testing first, please. Nonetheless, it's being released. And then there's the basic, simple truth. Many women suffer from postpartum depression because of not only chemical changes in the body, but because they know damned well there is little or no support for what it is they're facing. Sure, men do more child care now than they used to. That's by fractions. And sure, women of more financial means can hire help. But that still leaves out the vast majority of women, those who have just given birth. If she has already got children, love them as she may, she has quite a good idea of the additional workload this small, screaming 22-inch-long person will demand. If she's a first-time mother, she's understandably nervous, even fearful. There are reasons, however, societally induced, why she may feel that her life is basically over. It's the message sent her by the patriarchy, often openly articulated by her bosses at work. by family relatives, and by the lack of support systems that every other developed country has. Creches, baby networks, childbirth allowances, and parental leaves paid for all adults in the household, community-controlled childcare, and free, excellent medical care. This lack goes on, while older systems of kinship or, yes, villages to raise a child are increasingly rare. A new mother would be crazy if she was not depressed. Then again, a developed country like Japan that has some of those support systems still has problems. Recent research into the lives of employed mothers in Japan offers us these examples from such a woman's average day, as reported by Motoko Rich in the New York Times. Awake before anyone else in the family, she fills out logs every day, not to mention pages of work that she carefully checks and approves of with a personalized stamp. She must even keep daily records of conversations, activities, and meals. This is not for her job as a marketing professional. It's for her children's preschool, and must be done every day before she can even go to work. At a time when the country claims to be desperately needing more women like her in the workforce, such a woman is staggering under her current workload. Prime Minister Abe has announced an initiative he calls Womenomics to add more women into the country's labor force, but without factoring in more help for them at home. Japanese men do fewer hours of household chores and childcare than men in any of the other wealthy nations of the world. Women who work more than 40 hours a week typically also do 25 hours of housework a week, while their husbands do an average of less than 5. The preschool attended by our average employed mother requires daily journals that have recorded their temperatures and what they eat twice a day, along with descriptions of their moods, sleeping hours, and playtime. That's pretty far out. A parent, for which read mom, must personally sign off every homework assignment. Furthermore, cooking, cleaning, and laundry exceeds what most Westerners do because, for instance, a typical Japanese dinner involves preparing multiple small dishes, and besides, dishwashers are not yet ubiquitous. Our average working mother's husband, a management consultant, always stays late at the office or goes out drinking with clients, two deeply entrenched work habits in Japan. With a declining and rapidly aging population, there is a severe labor shortage. Hence the Prime Minister's encouragement of unemployed women to shore up the economy. But what's not being addressed is all that homework and the fact that close to half of employed women are employed part-time, and more than half are on temporary contract, reinforcing a large pay gap between men and women. When professional women do marry, it is standard procedure for companies that employ them to automatically convert their employment status to part-time, assuming they will have children and stay home more. Japanese employed mothers have developed the habit of letting a couple of trains go by while they wait on the platform at the station in order to get their only break all day. If this is not a definition of labor surrealism, I fail to know what is. Before the new Captain Marvel movie even debuted, it was already under attack. Captain Marvel has been female in the comic book since 2012, but this first movie release on March 8th drew some 58,000 online reviews, tanking its rating on the film review site Rotten Tomatoes, leaving the film with a ghastly score of around 30%. But guess what? Rotten Tomatoes fixed the problem that same day, removing about 50,000 of the reviews, which it turns out had been written before the film was even released. A concentrated troll campaign tried to sink another female hero, as they had tried to do with the all-female remake of Ghostbusters, and as they tried to do with Black Panther, and even with Star Wars The Last Jedi, which had a diverse cast and strong women leading characters. Well, Captain Marvel had the last laugh, and the film passed $500 million in ticket sales in its first week. And our word today from another language, whose meaning can only be approximated in English by a number of words, is from the German Erklärungsnot. Erklärungsnot, being German, is a sentence in itself, even in its native tongue. Erklärungsnot is a state shared by lying politicians, cheating lovers, and, well, say a 2-year-old person accused of having tried to flush the puppy down the toilet. It's the state you find yourself in when put on the spot without sufficient explanation or excuse for something you did or failed to do. Gee, I don't know how those crayon marks got all over the new rug. Darling, I have no idea who left that phone message for me. And, of course, the infamous, institutionalized, systemic sexist response. She asked for it. Surreal. We have to take another short break here, but I'll be back directly with the conversation. And this week, it is with a young woman who, is going to rock the world. And I'm confident of this because, frankly, at age 17, she already has and is just getting started. That's coming right up. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again. My guest for this week's conversation is someone who can just blow the roof off misconceptions. Two in particular. One, that young people are apathetic and they don't really care and they're not politically involved. Ha 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 ha. And the other, that the United Nations is this useless body of diplomatic old men who just jostle around in the delegates' lounge drinking and making jokes, some of them do, but really making no difference in the world. The UN is much more than that and is involved in changing real lives. And my next guest is a combination of both the unapathetic young and what the UN can do at its very best. Here is Salomée Levy. Salomée, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here today.
Well, thank you. You are a teen advisor to GirlUp. And first of all, let's start with you. How old are you, and where are you, and what community are you, and what made you want to become involved with GirlUp?
So I am from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I am currently 17 years old. And what really inspired me was back in the 8th grade when I started seeing around the world these high rates of gender inequality that happened, specifically in Latin America and sub-Saharan Africa. I saw how a lot of girls, and especially 98 million girls around the world, don't have an access to education,
right.
And there needed to be something done about it. So I saw this organization one day over social media called GirlUp, and I was really surprised how so many youth were involved in that organization.
Mm-hmm.
So when I became older and I learned more leadership skills in my community, I started a coalition in the 10th grade, summer of 10th grade actually, to start it in my community because there wasn't a GirlUp in Las Vegas. There was a GirlUp around the nation, but not one in Las Vegas.
Ah. So you began the Las Vegas, what would we call it, chapter, group?
Yes.
Headquarters?
Yeah, we can call it coalition.
A coalition.
Yeah, it's a group. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you think made you such a principled young person? not that your generation isn't, by and large, remarkably principled and very activist, to my joy and delight. The high school walkout recently around the world over climate change,
Right.
the Parkland leadership that then became into a national movement over gun control. I mean, what is happening with young people is so incredibly mature, while what is happening with older people is so childish, except that that's an unfair word to use about children. So, but in your particular case, were your parents activists? Was your background particularly activist?
So I recently started organizing in the community around the 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
When I became appointed to the Nevada Youth Legislature by Senator Woodhouse, where I represent 128,000 youth.
Oh,
So
well,
when I saw I had this position as being able to talk with different lawmakers, I saw that I had a privilege, that I had a platform, and that I needed to use it.
I'll say.
And as I reached out to different youth in the community, there was a lot of underrepresented voices. And I had stated to myself, since I have this opportunity, I need to do something to speak up for those who can't, to advocate for those who are silenced, to advocate for minorities, for LGBTQ, for women. So I started using my platform to reach out to different people in the community to help me create this coalition.
Mm-hmm. It's so wonderful. And this, a scant, maybe 15 years since the media was decrying youth was apathetic, youth didn't care, whatever happened to the fire and the flavor of the 60s and 70s. And look at it now. Just look. Well, talk now about ACT UP. I know it was founded by the UN Foundation. I think, was it 2010, 2012? Something like that. 2010.
Yeah.
Right. And tell, for people who have no idea, just what it is.
So what it is, the thing is, a lot of United Nations programs that are formed are specifically for either children or adults, but there isn't specifically a program for teen girls where they can provide safe abortions, where they can provide menstrual products for teenage girls and education materials specifically for teenage girls.
Right.
Like, teenage girls are excluded from different programs where they can have safe access to different programs. So GirlUp actually delivers these needs, where they not only reach out to teenage girls, they serve as an advocacy organization where they talk about these 98 million girls who aren't in school. And it's a global fundraising initiative where a lot of chapters around the world come together and raise awareness about gender inequality.
There's something like 50,000 girls have been involved so far.
Yes, and we have over 200 clubs around the nation.
Around that's just around the U.S., but it's also global, right?
Yeah, the world too. Like, there was some clubs recently started in France, the UK. It's all over. It
must give you a wonderful feeling to be part of something like that. That huge
Definitely.
and that active and that committed. And of course, teenage girls are it's so debilitating to think that they're left out of programs that they'd be too old for UNICEF and too young for something else, when they are in fact female human beings at possibly the most vulnerable age, because
right.
They're the most defenseless, and yet they can be raped and impregnated. They're burgeoning into womanhood, but there's very little support for that on the deepest and most important levels in most cultures in the world, because they're patriarchal. And so they're really stuck out on a limb, dangling there, if it weren't for people like you. Talk about some of the activities that you have done. I have a sheet here that you sent me, which just blew my head off, of the stuff that you've done in the past year or so. There was the Coral Academy of Science, Las Vegas, a meeting that you helped organize and sold coffee at, and the menstrual pads that you collected for girls who have no access to them, and the self-defense seminar and the ski run. Talk about some of those, because they're very creative and they're fun, as well as serving a really important purpose.
Definitely. So first off, our coalition, we really focus on advocating for both LGBTQ women and women of color, trans women. So we really focus on that intersectionality. We think it's really important to raise the voices of all women from different backgrounds, because we do have underrepresented women who need that voice, who need that support in our community. Our coalition is very diverse. We have women from all over background and different religions, which is really incredible. And we have about 3 clubs right now in different schools in the Las Vegas division. So at my school, GirlUp Coral, we have made a lot of fundraisers and seminars this year. Our upcoming one is in May, where we will be having a self-defense seminar that teaches girls how to defend themselves, partnering up with karate, a karate organization.
It's so great.
We're also showing a movie about global period poverty, and this movie is called Period. And the sentence, which just won the Oscar. So we're going to show that film and raise awareness about period poverty to our school, because not many people know the fact that they are privileged. They don't know that menstrual poverty is a thing and that we need to do something about it.
Yeah, well, it's due to a number of factors. It's due to the general poverty, of course, but also at its basis, the fact that menstruation is still so stigmatized. It's such a taboo subject to discuss. In many cultures, girls are made to stay home or in a room by themselves. In Nepal, women keep dying from the custom of being sent into mountain huts for 3 or 4 days during their periods because they are, quote, unclean. And there are many places in the world where girls simply can't go to school while they have their period because they have no pads. They have no sanitary tampons or sanitary materials of any sort. So bringing this in,
drop out.
That's right. So bringing this subject into the light as a natural, healthy function of female human beings is very important in itself in the raising awareness part. And then in addition to that, you raise money so that hygiene supplies can be bought and sent. Go on. The list is gladdening my heart.
So those are a couple of advocacy events that we do, because not only do we do fundraising, but we also want to have our members learn how to advocate and stand as their own leaders in the community to spread awareness. In the past, over the summer, where this has all started, we created a GoFundMe and raised $400 for menstrual products alone. And these delivered throughout schools in Las Vegas, in schools that have high dropout rate and are at risk.
Yeah.
So we delivered 5,200 menstrual products.
Wow. That's
it's still going on.
And the young women were eager to get them.
Where do we get them?
And the young women were eager to get them.
Definitely.
At the schools, and that's right in Las Vegas, one of the wealthiest communities in the wealthiest country in the world. So you can imagine Uganda, for example.
Right, and however, our school system, though, we are one of the worst school systems in the country.
Really?
Which is why, we are the 5th largest school district. However, we are ranked number 49 in education, as our dropout rates are just incredible. Like, it's terrible. Our dropout rates.
Ouch.
Like, our graduation rates is about 75 to 80%.
Oh my God! Why is that? Why what are the theories as to why that is?
Mostly due to budget and funding. In the past, the education system has cut funding for different programs. Right now, they're threatening to cut the art program, and it's just deficit spending. Like this year, we had $68 million in deficit spending, and that caused larger classroom sizes, teachers to be laid off. So
all that money pouring into the casinos. You'd certainly think that some of it would be going toward the education system. And why do I even wonder? And Nevada, of course, recently became one of the few states to have maybe the only state to have a majority women in the state legislature. So maybe that will change now that there's more women there, hopefully with consciences. Any sign of that?
Hopefully. I'm really hoping, especially with the recent bill to cut the period tax, the menstrual product tax.
Yes.
I'm really hoping to see a change.
Yes. Yeah. This is right. This is, of course, listeners, the on the theory that menstrual products are a luxury. They're not a necessity, you understand. Viagra is classified as a necessity, but menstrual pads and tampons are not. It makes you crazy. It just makes your teeth grind.
Wow.
Go on though. So it's wonderful that you serve people in your own community, because sometimes with such organizations, there's an attitude that only focuses elsewhere, while people in their own backyards are in real trouble. So it's wonderful that GirlUp is in sub-Saharan Africa and Central America and Southeast Asia, but it's wonderful also that it's in Las Vegas and tending to Las Vegas.
Definitely.
What do you hope comes of this? Do you want to? Are you planning a lifetime of activism? You seem a remarkably well tuned into politics today and issues and caring, just real deep caring, but not with knowledgeability and acquiring skills. You're going to grow up and run for president, please?
Unfortunately, I cannot run for president as I wasn't born in this country. So
oh, rats.
But however, I really hope on running for Senate.
Okay.
I'm really passionate about politics, and I definitely hope that in the future I can pursue a law degree so I can use my platform as a human rights lawyer to further extend my knowledge and activism and fight for human rights for everyone.
Oh, you are a jewel. Where were you born?
I was born in Paris, France.
Well, that's very chic of you.
Actually, my mother is French, but my father, he is Central American. He is from Belize. So ever since So
you're a good combination. My God. Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool to have two perspectives, especially global perspectives. I have a perspective from the European world, but I also have the perspective from the Latin American world, where Belize, Guatemala, I have those perspectives.
Yeah. It's richer for that.
Yeah, definitely.
So much more rich. Yeah. Did when you finish a term as a teen advisor, and as a teen advisor you sort of oversee the work and the plans that the younger girls are making. Am I correct?
Yes.
And how young can you be? How old, let me put it that way, do you have to be to join GirlUp? What's the youngest?
Any age.
Oh, any age.
There's elementary school girls that join. I think age shouldn't determine someone's activist and ability to make a change in the world. I think you should start as early as you want. If you're really passionate and willing to make a change, go for it. I
couldn't agree more. I think that, in fact, in this country, that we ought to establish that the vote would come in around age 12 to 14. I'm quite serious, and I've been saying this for years, because it's your future that is being determined in votes. And interestingly enough, the excuses that are made against it are the same excuses, believe it or not, that were made against women's suffrage. So, but that's
exactly.
Yeah, that's another subject altogether. So how long is a term when that you serve as a girl advisor, and do they rotate, or once you are one, you sort of stay on call? How does it work?
Usually it is for 1 year, and there's usually applications that come out early February. Like early February, end of February to early March, I believe. And yeah, it just turns around. Different people get accepted every year, and you are invited to serve as chair of the class.
Wow. And so when your term is up, do you stay associated with the organization?
Definitely. I continue to serve Las Vegas. And the local Las Vegas GirlUp community, and see if any other chapters around the world need support. Reach out to different ambassadors from GirlUp to just work with them, collaborate, and learn from their ideas.
If girls are listening, or aunts or mothers or fathers for that matter, or brothers, anybody who knows a girl and thinks she might be interested, they can go to the website, am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is simply girlup.org?
Correct.
Right. And it works with the other UN agencies and programs like UNHCR, Human Rights Commission, and UNFPA, the Population Fund, and, all of the UN agencies, and then also has corporate donors who have contributed regularly, and I guess who commit to contributing regularly, in addition to the fundraising you have to do. Well, congratulations on the political and economic and social and societal work that you've already done, and on the work yet to come. You really give an old organizer like me great hope and ebullience, because you're full of sass and vinegar and vision, and you're a wonderful thing to perceive. So keep it up, Salomée. I expect to hear that you're running for Senate as probably the youngest person ever to be in the Senate in the next, 15 minutes or so. I know you can't legally until you're a certain age, but I imagine, let me put it this way. I'd like you to come back on the program when you're bearing your first official office, okay?
Okay, definitely.
Or when you're campaigning, that too. That's a possibility. So take care, and thank you so much for being with us, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing for teens everywhere and for yourself into the bargain.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
We need to take one last break here before I return with some fighting words.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, it's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Talk radio with a brain.
Welcome back again to some fighting words. It's the room in the middle of the labyrinth, the mystery hiding in plain sight. It's the intersection where all intersectionalities meet. It's the place where sexism and racism are exposed as the same thing, indissoluble. It's reproduction. Quote, "It's the birth rates," close quote. The white Christian male murderer of 50 women, children, and men in New Zealand last week had released a document online titled The Great Replacement before he committed the massacre. The opening words, repeated 3 times, were, "It's the birth rates." The cathexis of male identity, fascistic politics, woman fear, woman hatred, and violence is an infamous old alliance. We really ought to be able to recognize it by now. In the 1930s, the German National Socialists, the Nazis, agitated against employed women, contraception and abortion, and homosexuality, and revived the idea of Kinder, Kirche, Küche, children, church, and kitchen, for German womanhood. A working coalition of misogyny between the Nazi Party and the German Roman Catholic Church served long enough for Hitler to consolidate his power. He had been elected, after all. Feminist groups and publications were then closed down, as were contraception clinics. In 1933, the year Hitler became chancellor, feminists, along with non-Aryans, were forced out of their jobs in teaching and other public positions. Women were barred from political office and from the judicial bench. 1 year later, in 1934, abortion was banned outright and made a criminal offense against the state, punishable by hard labor or the death penalty. Today, the far-right movements around the world are following the identical playbook as they always have. White supremacy equals male supremacy and the reverse. A personal note. I wrote an entire book about such men, The Demon Lover, The Sexuality of Terrorism. I'm sorry I ever had to write it, but glad I did, because otherwise I'd have to write it now. I wrote The Demon Lover 3 decades ago, yet it's still going strong because it's maddeningly relevant, even to my grief, prescient. I also know New Zealand. I've spent many happy hours in Aotearoa, or Land of the Low-Lying White Cloud, the Maori name for that country. I once taught feminist studies for a full semester as a guest professor at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, where these mosque massacres last week took place. Christchurch is a tidy, almost sleepy little city, possibly the most colonial in the Antipodes, trying so hard to be merry old England that the river is named Avon and street lamps sport hanging pots of scarlet geraniums instead of the indigenous Pohutakawa blossoms. It's a picture book city. The people are polite and friendly, though like all Kiwis, they're a bit reserved, until you get them talking about their gardens, and then you cannot stop them. It was difficult enough to imagine the placidity of Christchurch having been devastated by the 2011 earthquake, but it's even harder to imagine Christchurch shattered by the violent, man-made disaster last week. One can understand why people fleeing violent homelands taken over by religio-political fanatic men had fled to such a place, seeking a new home, seeking peace. But a religio-political fanatic man of a different sort made sure they would not find peace. Because of the birth rates, you see. He had named his document The Great Replacement to echo what white supremacists had screamed in Charlottesville, Virginia, when they marched bearing tiki torches, chanting, "You will not replace us." That's also the slogan of Identity Europa, another neo-Nazi group. In fact, it's all over the right-wing web, popularized by a fascistic French philosopher, Renaud Camus, no relation whatsoever to the fine novelist Albert Camus. It has heavily influenced the nativist Dutch politician Geert Wilders and the far-right political parties across Europe. It's an extension of colonialist theory based on the fear that white women are not bearing enough children and that this will lead to white people being replaced by the other. It promulgates measures against the other, measures that range from discrimination to genocide. Many such ultra-right groups obsess about falling birth rates around the world, too ignorant to understand that this is actually a striven-for blessing to an overpopulated planet and to the liberation of women as whole human beings rather than full-time reproducers. On the contrary, these men regard women doing anything except children, church, and kitchen as a threat to their manhood, which they define as equated with their very existence. Many openly state that women should lose the right to employment. What began as a series of jokes that it was wrong to have given women the right to vote has now turned more serious, and not only in overtly neo-Nazi spaces either. In a terrifyingly mirror-image fashion, these extreme rightists express envy about ways in which they see how the other, the Islamic State, for example, treats its women, and they articulate rage that they're unable to do the same in the West. Most believe in the totally specious myth of the clash of civilizations, and insist that white males are in a weakened position because white females no longer are living the way the others are. For this, they naturally blame feminism. and they vow that they will bring on the apocalypse rather than let this continue. They use as informational fodder recent studies showing sperm counts and testosterone declining, phenomena not unrelated, by the way, to global warming and polluted natural resources. But they see this as a sign that feminism is trying to destroy them. They buy sperm counters. They go to testosterone replacement therapy. Chat rooms and message boards throughout the so-called manosphere are filled with communications about increasing sexual dysfunction and low sperm counts. In an excellent March 19th New York Times article, Nellie Bowles quotes Dr. Paola Bacchetta, a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, who serves on the board of the Center for Right-Wing Studies, saying, quote, "It's all about their anxieties about their male others. They fear being overproduced and eliminated. But it's not only on the dark web, on 4chan and 8chan. It has even more alarmingly entered mainstream right-wing rhetoric. It's masked as the longing for a return to family values when expressed on Fox News, and Tucker Carlson on Fox even veers close to saying it out loud. A member of the United States Congress, Iowa Republican Congressman Steve King, tweeted last year, quote, "We cannot restore our civilization with somebody else's babies," close quote. It's present in all the dog whistles and hints that Trump drops, because, for example, a slowing birth rate in some Western countries might mean that immigration is actually necessary to keep the population stable. Sex is the first political point of agreement that a white supremacist recruiter online uses. And remember that they're approaching teenage and early 20s males who are preoccupied with sex anyway. Annie Kelly, a doctoral student at the University of East Anglia in Britain, researches the impact of digital cultures on anti-feminism and the far right, and she notes, quote, "In gaming and comic books and these things that aren't politically related, anti-feminism is an easy access point to make your case," close quote. The Nazis, not having an internet, flooded Poland and other newly invaded and conquered countries with violent pornography, toward the same exact result. Once a group of young men in an online forum agrees that declining white birth rates are an existential threat, then the conversation turns to policies. Policies range from the need to re-educate white women to the need to kill all non-whites. So much more could and must be written about all this, and I've been trying to do that since The Demon Lover first came out. It is the unavoidable, ineluctable truth that women's capacity to reproduce is perceived by white supremacist groups and their allies as the ultimate territory to be conquered, because only then can they be certain of the myth that their manhood is all-powerful. More on this subject, I fear, more in days to come. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's our show for today. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheRobinMorgan and on Facebook at facebook.com/TheRobinMorgan. Check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book, Dark Matter, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for our show. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.